Happy Super Bowl Sunday, and happy, intro to a new series, a little mini-series we're going to do here for a couple weeks called Consistently Inconsistent. That's catchy, isn't it? That's kind of a tongue twister, so don't judge me if I mess that up a few times. Consistently Inconsistent. If I mess it up, I'm going to blame Michelle. It was her idea for me to use this title, so Consistently Inconsistent. Let's say it together. Ready? Consistently inconsistent. How many of you had New Year's resolutions? Most of us, some of us. How many of you have ever had a New Year's resolution? There we go. How many of you broke that New Year's resolution? Huh? I'm right there with you. I find in my life that the things that I'm consistent at are the things that I really shouldn't be consistent at. Right? And then I find the things that I am consistent at, or that I'm not consistent at, right, are things that I should be consistent at. And for a lot of us, we're consistent without a doubt. But we're consistently inconsistent. I'm consistent at the things that I don't need to be doing, and inconsistent at the things that I should be doing. The unhealthy patterns in my life, in all of our lives, for some reason, I don't know if you're like me, those things are a lot easier to continue doing, aren't they? Over and over and over again. Just a few examples. Some of us, and I'm not judging anybody, and I'm not going into this, so don't misunderstand me, but some of us put things into our body over and over again, right? We develop these habits, like smoking or dipping or drinking or whatever. And listen, we're not going to have a big debate over whether that's wrong or right in the Bible. I got bigger things to worry about than that. I'm just telling you this morning, that's probably not an unhealthy thing for you, right? But that's a pattern. And if you're like me, it's a lot easier to continue in that pattern over and over again. Or maybe it's like for food, right? Some of us have a problem and we just can't stop. We eat and we eat and we eat when we get stressed out, and we get into, and maybe we eat, if you're like me, you eat really unhealthy food a bunch. And we consistently do that. Or maybe for some of us, we have young families, or we have families, and we look at our lives and we're so busy. We're so busy and we don't spend time with our family, but we consistently, and we know what the end result of that will be. But because it's not right here or right now, we continue to consistently do those things. Here's the point. When the consequences of our actions are not immediately apparent, we tend to brush off the consequences like they aren't even real. I want you to get that. When the consequences of our actions are not immediately apparent, we tend to brush off those consequences like they aren't real. Isn't that right? I know that if I smoke those cigarettes, what the end result of that might be, right? And I know that if I don't spend time with my family, then one day when I'm older, my kids may not want to have anything to do to me. If we can live in that moment, if we can just think and for a second place ourselves in the moment of our consequences, I believe it would change a lot of stuff for us. When the consequences are not immediately apparent, and you can apply this to anything in your life, just a few examples, but when they're not immediately apparent in our life, it's a lot easier for us just to say, you know what, not that big of a deal. Not that big of a deal. But in reality, it's a huge deal. Because there is a power in consistency. There's a power. And that goes both ways. Right? When we do something over and over and over and over again, and it's a good thing, there's a huge power in that. When we do something over and over and over again, and that's something that's unhealthy for us, there's a huge power, a huge negative power in that too, right? Success in life is this for us. Success in life is doing the ordinary things extraordinarily well. It's doing the ordinary things extraordinarily well. I fear in this culture that we live in, those of us who are followers of Jesus, we live in this culture full of what I'm going to call bargain hunter Christians. Write that down. Bargain hunter Christians. How many of you enjoy going to garage sales? Anybody? Why do you go to garage sales? What are you doing? You're looking to pay and get a good deal on something, right? You're not going to pay full price. You're going to get a good deal on something. We like bargains. Look at the clothing stores that are popping up. I don't know about you, but when I go shopping somewhere, I go to one of them cheap stores, right? One of those that Ross Dress for Less, or what are those stores? That's where I'm going. The cheapest I can find is where I'm going to go. I like bargains. Emily likes going into this repeat store where it's for the kid. What's it called? Once Upon a Child or something? Where they resell clothes. I went in there one time with her. It's for kids, and people bring their clothes in, they give them money, and then they resell them. And I started looking at prices. I was like, listen, we can go over to the mall over here and get it for the same exact price. Why are we finna pay it's used? It don't make any sense. Bargain hunters. I've noticed here recently, maybe you have too, there are dollar stores popping up everywhere, aren't there? Huh? Dollar General stores, Family Dollar stores. That's pretty interesting, isn't it? I mean, how many have there been there in the last few years around here? 4 or 5, huh? Probably in Tyler County that have popped up. It's like, what's going on? Dollar stores popping up everywhere. We live in a bargain hunter culture. Let me tell you something. I got a new favorite store. I'm excited to tell you guys this because I want to tell you, it ain't church, but it's pretty close. When you go into Harbor Freight, you guys know what I'm talking about. If you don't know what Harbor Freight is, it's a tool store. It's like a dollar store for men, okay? I don't know what it is. I ain't even got to buy anything. I can just walk in there for 20 minutes and walk around and walk out, and I feel so much better. I love me some Harbor Freight. Why is that? Because I can go in Harbor Freight and I can get some tools for cheap. And my favorite part is they always have the signs in it that says, well, you can compare this drill to the DeWalt drill that costs $300 over another store, right? I'm like, man, I can get that for $50. Sign me up, right? I love it. And they got everything in that store, too. It's amazing. I mean, pretty soon we're going to start grocery shopping in there. It's a great thing. I want to encourage you to go to Harbor Freight if you hadn't been. And I'm not getting a plug, or I mean, any kind of, advertiser fee or anything, so don't think that. But we live in a bargain culture. And for some of us, what we have become and what we want to become naturally are these bargain hunter Christians. And what that means is we don't want to go all in. We want something valuable for cheap. But don't you know most of the time that don't happen? All of us want something valuable for cheap. But let me tell you something. When it comes to our faith and when it comes to Christianity, that simply is not a possibility. There's nothing cheap about our faith. There's nothing cheap about the gospel. There's nothing cheap about what we're doing. Some of us have become bargain hunter Christians. We're going to be in Luke chapter 14 today, if you got your Bible. Luke 14. Pretty familiar passage here we're going to deal with. It's a tough passage. It's tough. Jesus is talking here in Luke chapter 14. Give you a minute to turn there. But in Luke 14, starting in verse 25, it'll be on the screen for you. Now great crowds accompanied him. That's Jesus. Jesus didn't care about being popular. You know that? Like he wasn't afraid to just drop some truth on people all of a sudden. Kind of hit you out of nowhere, right? So they had all these crowds that were following him. And he turned to them and said, if anyone comes to me and does not hate his own father and mother and wife and children and brothers and sisters, yes, even his own life, he cannot be my disciple. He just messed it up, didn't he? All these people were following him. They were so excited. He was healing, doing all these amazing things. And Jesus just kind of drops a bomb on there like, pfft. People are like, oh, what? Did he just say that? Hold the phone, Jesus. You just killed the mood. Why did you do that? Why did you do that? It's intense. Nothing is more important than Jesus. Continuing on in Luke 14, verse 27. This keeps getting better. Whoever does not bear his own cross and come after me cannot be my disciple. Folks, can I tell you that the cross this morning is more than something that just hangs around your neck. And our culture has sort of minimized that, right? And kind of made it, oh, that's a cross, and it's kind of pretty. We can hang them in our house and have a cross wall and do all these kind of things, right? But the cross is a very ugly thing. Sometimes we think the cross is something that happens to us. For example, we experience something, and maybe like a misfortune, and we say, you know, I suppose this is the cross that I have to bear. But that's not what he's saying. The cross is a choice. It's a choice that we make to put things to death in our life that hinder us from following Jesus consistently and passionately. That's what the cross is. In Luke chapter 9, verse 23, Jesus kind of says the same thing again, but he goes further. He said, if anyone will come after me, let him deny himself and take up his cross, what? Daily. Important part for us. And follow me. This is not for the faint of heart. If we're going to follow Jesus, we've got to die to ourselves, and we've got to pick up our cross every single day and be consistent with that. The cross, picking up our cross, requires consistency. I want you to think about how important consistency is in the world that we live in. It's pretty important, isn't it? Just think about it. Let's think about when it comes to sports, right? Today is Super Bowl Sunday. You may or may not be watching. I don't know if I'm going to or not. I think I'm just going to eat some good food. That's probably about it. But think about consistency. Today, the team that's playing in the Super Bowl, what is kind of their hallmark? The New England Patriots, right? Unfortunately, I hate to say this as a Cowboys fan, they're the best football team that there's ever been in the history of the NFL, period. When you look back over the span of the last 10, 15 years, they have one thing in common. They are consistent every single year. And that pays off for them. And they're rewarded in that way, right? Consistency in sports. What about when it comes to your employer? If you show up for work every other day, what's going to happen? They're going to fire you, right? They want you to be there every day, to be on time, to do your job consistently every single day. What about if you're an employee? Whenever your employer says, you know what, I can't, I'm supposed to pay you today, but I can't pay you till tomorrow. You like that very much? No. Consistency, if you're an employee. Here's a good one. For those of you that have young families like me or families at all, maybe you're just messy. What happens if you don't clean your house every day? Or if you go 3 or 4 days, if you've got young kids in your house, what happens? That thing gets destroyed. And you look back in like 4 or 5 days, you're like, what in the world just happened? What happened? Well, you know what I did? I hired a house cleaner. It's the best thing ever. So that's how I fixed that problem. But consistency matters there. If you're in the military, think about it. Life or death, your life or death, others' life or death depends upon consistency. A lot of us that are farmers or that kind of work out in the woods or work with our hands or use any kind of equipment, what do we know about consistency? We know that if we have a piece of equipment, we've got a chainsaw, we've got a lawnmower or something like that, and we don't use that thing consistently, what's going to happen? What happens to it? The next time you go to crank in about 2 months, like I did with my lawnmower a few weeks ago, it doesn't work. It demands consistency. Our whole world demands consistency. And some reason, when it comes to our faith, we want to just say, you know what? I'll just do that every once in a while. Or I'll kind of put that on the back burner. And we think that's okay, that we can just kind of slide by like that. Why would we think that we can get by with anything less as followers of Jesus than being consistent Consistency is the key. For some of us, we are consistently inconsistent. Continue on in Luke chapter 14, verse 28. It says this, Jesus talking, "For which of you desiring to build a tower does not first sit down and count the cost, whether he has enough to complete it? Otherwise, when he has laid a foundation and is not able to finish, all who see it will begin to mock him, saying, 'This man began to build and was not able to finish.'" Every once in a while, I'll come across a building that's incomplete, that's just been sitting there, that maybe somebody ran out of money or something happened, it's just sitting there. And man, that is the saddest thing in the world to me. Because there's somebody got 60, 70% along in the process. They got the slab poured, and they got the frame up, right? They've got the roof on, and there it just sits. And over time, it just withers away, and it's just a big waste of time and a big waste of money. And what Jesus is saying here is this: you'd be better off not building it if you can't complete it. You'd be better off. If you're not willing to give yourself completely to Jesus, you'd be better off not giving anything. That's a tough concept. You know why that is? There's a lot of reasons why, but it's kind of humiliating when you drive by a building that hadn't been completed. It's pretty humiliating for that person who was building that building, right? It's sort of embarrassing because people see it and people talk about it, right? And Jesus is saying, look, if you're not going to go all in, if you're not going to be consistent, don't waste your time. Don't waste your time. Don't waste your energy. I want all or I want nothing. So count the cost. He continues on in verse 31, going kind of the same direction. Or what king going out to encounter another king in war will not sit down first and deliberate whether he is able with 10,000 to meet him who comes against him with 20,000? And if not, while the other is yet a great off, he sends a delegation and asks for terms of peace. So therefore, in verse 33, any one of you who does not renounce all that he has cannot be my disciple. Verse 33 sums the whole thing up. Jesus demands complete, consistent commitment. That's what he's looking for out of me and you. I want to give you an example of this. And this is just one example in the midst of what could be many. But let's talk about the consistency of which we attend church. Can we do that? I would say, and granted, this isn't for everybody, but there's some that are on both ends of the spectrum, but I would say at our church, just over my 5 years almost of doing this, that out of 8 Sundays a year, the average is people that call Country Church their church home, out of every 8 Sundays, they come 3 to 4 Sundays out of every 8 Sundays. That's the average. Now, some of you come every Sunday. Some of you don't. And I'm not railing against you. I'm just pointing this out. I feel like for most churches that are more established churches, they're probably more like 6 to 8 or 7 to 8. And I'm excited about the fact that we've got a lot of folks here who aren't church people. I think that's great. That's who we're trying to reach, and I'm glad you're here. But I want you to understand there is value in you consistently being here as much as you can every single week. It's not because of some religious reason. It's because of this. Consistency over time around the things that Jesus values over time will create good things. You may not see it now, but over time, things happens. You know what I thought was pretty interesting? Some folks that are not Christian people have kind of compiled a couple of different studies about the benefits of going to church. And these aren't folks that are Christians. They're out of Harvard, some of them. So here's a couple of benefits of coming to church. They researched some stuff and took some stats over a period of time, and they came up with these 5 benefits of coming to church. The first one is this. Going to church boosts the immune system, lowers blood pressure, and helps you live longer. Okay. That's not me. That's Harvard. You gonna argue with Harvard? I'm just saying. Second one, frequent churchgoers have a larger social circle with more kinds of support than people who don't attend. We know that's true, right? That's called family. Many of us, all of us, have gone through times in our lives that have been here, and we need other people in those times. And we've had people wrap their arms around us and help us through. There is nothing that can replace that in this whole entire world. We're a family for those who don't have families, or those who do have families. The third thing, people who go to services regularly, according to studies, are less likely to be depressed. You want to argue with Harvard? I'm not arguing. I'm just saying. It's the truth. They're less likely to be depressed. Here's a good one for your parents. Teens, the fourth one, teens who regularly attend church do better in school. I believe that. I believe that completely because they're around better people, right? And they learn things here at church that go over and cross over into other spectrums of their life. And the last thing is that churchgoers, number 5, according to Harvard and some other smart guys that are a lot smarter than me, churchgoers are happier with their lives overall. And I would disagree with that because it's not happiness, it's joy. Churchgoers have joy that transcends everything. It doesn't matter what the circumstances are in your life. The stats say that, look, if you come to church, overall, you're not going to be depressed and you're going to have joy. That's true. So if that's the case, even though those things right then and there, I can't grab that, I can't see that, but if those are the consequences of me being consistently here, then I tell you one thing, I'm going to be here. Because I know that that's true, and I'm going to live in that truth. I'm going to be here. So here's what I'm going to do. Starting not next week, but the next week, I believe that's the 18th, 17th of Sunday, I'm going to challenge our church to do a 6-week attendance challenge. And I'm going to challenge you that there will be 6 weeks from that Sunday through Palm Sunday, and the next Sunday will be Easter. It'll be 6 weeks prior to Easter. I'm going to challenge you to make it to 5 out of 6 Sunday services. Some of you are like, no big deal, I can do that. Some of you are like, all right, so I'm going to bribe you. I'm not going to tell you what it's going to be yet, but we're going to give away a prize. And if you make those 5 out of 6 Sundays, on Palm Sunday, we're going to give away a big prize, and you're going to be entered into the drawing. If you make 6 out of 6, you'll be entered twice. Okay? I want you to come. I want you to attend. It's for your own good, I'm telling you. Let's finish up as our band comes back up. Luke 14, verse 34 and 35 says this, salt is good, but if salt has lost its taste, how shall its saltiness be restored? It is of no use, either for the soil or for the manure pile, and it is thrown away. He who has ears, let him hear. If salt loses its saltiness or its ability to be salt, if salt were to, if you were to have a big thing of salt and you set it on the ground outside, over time what's going to happen? You're going to come back in a couple of weeks and it's going to dissolve into the ground. It's going to be gone. It's not going to be there anymore. It's going to lose its ability to be salty. And Jesus says, if that's the case, it's worthless. So what's he saying? He's saying this, use it or lose it. Use it or lose it. I don't know what that means for you this morning, but I know this. When things set up for a while, equipment, right, like we talked about earlier, we know that they don't work eventually, but over time they start to get kind of rusty, don't they? They get rusty. And I don't want anything that's rusty if I can avoid it. But for some of us this morning, what I believe the Lord is telling us is that He wants to spray some good old WD-40 in our lives. That's what He wants to do. Some of us are rusty because we have not consistently been coming to church. We have not consistently been in God's Word. We have not consistently been talking with Him, been in prayer with Him, been communicating with Him. We have not consistently done it, so we kind of get rusty. When we get rusty, things are kind of hard to move a little bit, right? And this morning, God, I believe, wants us to spray some WD-40 in our lives and to kind of break loose of some things and to start functioning again in the way, in the capacity He wants. He desires consistency. Consistency is the key to this whole deal.